Hey everyone, I want this video to be an in-depth explanation of the Flanger effect, more specifically the Flanger effect plugin in Logic Pro, a very popular effect commonly used on guitars, among other instruments. Before we get started though, I hope you'll subscribe if you're interested in staying up to date on more in-depth tutorials in the future. Let's go ahead and jump into a session that I've been working on, where I've soloed out one of the guitar tracks. As you can see, I have the Flanger effect open, as well as the channel EQ. The channel EQ will be useful for visualizing some of the changes that we make within the Flanger effect plugin later on. First, let's go ahead and take a listen to the guitar track without the Flanger effect turned on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Flanger effect to the end of my mono channel strip, and we're going to talk about some of the knobs or parameters on the plugin itself. First, let's listen to that same guitar track with the Flanger at its default settings. This is probably a pretty familiar sound to you, especially paired with an electric guitar. If you're tired of the explanation of this plugin ending at the fact that it sounds underwater or spacey, then please keep watching because we're going to take a deep dive into each one of these parameters and see how the EQ distribution is affected by them. Overall, a Flanger effect is very similar to a chorus effect. If you remember from our video on chorus effects, a chorus effect is achieved by duplicating a dry signal, delaying one of those signals slightly, and then shifting that delay time back and forth using something that we call an LFO, or low frequency oscillator. Remember that a low frequency oscillator is a waveform below 20 Hz, meaning that the human ear can't distinguish a pitch from it. However, it can be used to disrupt or modulate another signal. In this case, it is modulating the delay time between our dry signal and our delayed signal. A Flanger effect has a few key differences that distinguishes it from a chorus effect. The first being that max delay time between our dry signal and our modulated signal is much shorter in a Flanger effect. The second being that most modern flangers contain the ability to feed back that modulated signal through the plugin once more. Let's take a look at this very first knob, the rate. The rate in this plugin is measured in hertz. Hertz are a measure of frequency. However, as we said earlier, the LFO has no audible frequency to our ear. Therefore, the rate in this case is just synonymous with speed. Increasing this rate, then, would increase the number of encounters our dry signal has with each trough and crest of our LFO. Let's take a listen to our guitar track and slowly increase this rate to hear the difference. As you could hear, as we increased that rate past a certain point, our dry signal became more and more disrupted. This specific plugin has the ability to sync our rate with the tempo that we have set in our project settings. You can sync the rate to your project by clicking this eighth note symbol directly to the left of the rate knob. The intensity parameter is synonymous with the amplitude or depth of our LFO wave, whereas the rate is disrupting our signal by increasing the number of encounters with crests and troughs of the modulated signal. Raising the intensity will increasingly disrupt our original signal by increasing the impact of each trough and crest of our LFO on our dry signal. Let's bring our intensity low to high and hear how it impacts our sound. As you can hear, the intensity has a much more prominent effect on the pitch of our dry signal. As I mentioned earlier, most modern flangers contain a feedback option, which allows you to feed back your modulated signal back through your plugin. This can create something in our EQ distribution known as a comb filter effect. As I play the track and slowly increase the amount of feedback, keep your eyes on the EQ distribution, and you should notice a series of peaks and notches, which can be seen rising and falling along the EQ distribution. You obviously have to be very careful with higher feedbacks, as that sweeping resonance that's created can sometimes hit certain frequencies that are very piercing to our ears. This flanger effect also has something which is known as negative feedback. Negative feedback functions in the same way that our positive feedback does. However, with negative feedback, the phase of the modulated signal is inverted before looping back through the plugin. As I raise the negative feedback, you should notice similar peaks and notches form along the EQ distribution. However, many have described this negative feedback as sounding more hollow or darker than its positive counterpart. Something interesting to note is how our rate and intensity are affecting the comb filter that we created through feeding back our signal. With the positive feedback at its max value, I want you to notice how increasing the rate will impact the speed at which our peaks and notches travel along the EQ distribution, and how the intensity impacts the comb filter's breadth, or how far it reaches along the EQ distribution. As you could see and hear, the rate created a very wobbly effect, and you could barely notice the gradual change of those peaks and notches in our comb filter. The intensity, however, made a very noticeable difference in what frequencies were included in that modulated signal, most notably the bass frequencies. Our final parameter or knob is the mix knob, and the mix knob just determines how much of our modulated signal is incorporated into our final output. 0% would be a completely dry signal with no flanger effect. 50% would be half dry signal, half modulated signal. And 100% would be pure modulated signal. Let's listen to how the mix knob affects our sound. Now we've talked about all the parts of the Flanger plugin in Logic Pro. I hope you found this video informative, and I hope you'll like, subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions. Go ahead and take a listen to how our new Flanger track fits into the whole song, and while you listen, be sure to check out some of our other in-depth tutorials. I'll see you next time.